Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. This is Heidi from My Reading Life, and I'm here today to start my Springathon vlog part 3. So we're in the third week of May, and I had to take a short break there over the last weekend in order to finish my BookTube prize book and to do some other reading over the mid-month book bash. But I'm back again on Tuesday. It is May 17th. And I want to talk to you about some of my Springathon reads. So I am actually going to DNF this book. This is The Snow Leopard by Peter Matthieson. And this is a classic of nature nonfiction. It was actually the winner of the National Book Award. I think it was first published in the 1970s. Let me just look it up for you. It was first published, yes, 1978. And I found this extremely slow going to the point where it was almost tedious. We're following Peter as he is walking with a scientist friend of his through Nepal, into the Himalayas to observe goats, mountain goats of some kind, and also to hopefully catch a glimpse of the mysterious snow leopard. But I read about 55 pages of this, and we're still just walking. We haven't even made it to the Himalayas. I mean, yes, they're in mountainous region, but they're not to the place where they're supposed to be observing the animals. And it's been a lot of digressions into spirituality of various different types. Lots of very frank discussion of taking hallucinogens and other kinds of drugs in order to go on journeys to find your spirituality. And it's just not my kind of thing. I'm just not into that sort of discussion. If you are, that's great. This book might be for you. For me, I just found it. I wanted to get to the part that was going to be about the goats and the snow leopards and doing science in a very difficult landscape. And it was more about the author's personal exploration of spirituality and what that meant to him. And that was not why I wanted to read. That's not a book that I want to read. So I'm just going to let go of this and DNF it at this point. So then I picked up another book from my TBR. This is The Language of Butterflies, and it is very shiny, so I will try to hold it so it doesn't blind you. But The Language of Butterflies, How Thieves, Hoarders, Scientists, and Other Obsessives Unlock the Secrets of the World's Favorite Insect by Wendy Williams. And I had purchased this book because I saw both Britta Bowler and Doris at Aldi Books talk about this a couple years ago. They both really enjoyed it. So I saw this book at some point in my local bookstore and I picked it up. Last night when I started to read it, it just immediately sucked me in. This is exactly what I want to be reading. It is the kind of science writing that I really enjoy, where we're exploring one particular group of animals, in this case, the butterfly. And I have already learned tons of things that I did not know about butterflies. For one thing, what we call butterflies is just such a small group of an insect class called Lepidoptera, which encompasses like over 100,000 different types of individual species, and the majority of which are not butterflies, but are in fact moths. And I couldn't have told you before I started reading this book the difference between moths and butterflies, but I now know the difference. And also, I've been reading about the most mind-blowing information about proboscis on butterflies and moths and how proboscis actually work. Spoiler alert, these animals do not actively suck through their proboscis. So that was fascinating. I was mind blown. And so that's the kind of stuff that I really like in my nature nonfiction. So this is right on my alley. And like I said, I've already read the first 44 pages of this. It's only about 200 pages long, so I don't anticipate that it's going to take me a very long time to read this. So this is what I will be focused on next for Springathon. So I apologize for this not being a very good vlog this week. It is Sunday, May 22nd, and I have finally finished The Language of Butterflies by Wendy Williams. And this is the only book for Springathon that I've finished this particular week of Springathon because my work week was, not conducive to reading. I mean, I did get an audiobook finished, but it was Villette, not anything for Springathon. And my work has just been, it's been outrageously busy and not conducive to getting anything done. I don't try to get this so you don't have to see the doorknob behind me. But anyway, The Language of Butterflies, How Thieves, Hoarders, Scientists, and Other Obsessives Unlock the Secrets of the World's Favorite Insect. I absolutely love this book. This was a 5-star read for me. It is just exactly what I like in my science nonfiction. It is a mixture of just super interesting facts about butterflies and moths and the Lepidoptera. I mean, in general, that class of flying insects that we know of, the butterflies best. And it was just fascinating. Also, this book talks a lot about different projects that humans are undertaking in order to try to preserve butterflies, because humans are obsessed with butterflies. And this book goes into why we're obsessed with butterflies, and it has to do with their color, because color is something that humans are evolutionarily inclined to pay attention to and to be obsessed with. So that was fascinating. There's a story in here that talks about how in California, there's an area in a whole region of the California coast that butterflies go to. They migrate to this area, and it's basically their coastal gathering spot. And there's a golf course in that area where the golf course is being managed in a way to preserve a little woodland area within the property as roost for butterflies, for monarch butterflies. And it's just lovely to read about people who are trying to do conservation in a way that balances, how they want to use the property, in this case, a golf course, with the need for these butterflies to have a place where they can gather on their migratory route. And, my sweet spot that I've talked about many times is how you balance the human interest in the earth versus everything else that lives here and their interests in the earth. And that was just one example within the pages of this book that talks about how you balance human use versus the use of other forms of wildlife. And I thought that was just lovely. This book also talks about, I've got some places marked that I wanted to bring to your attention. This book talks about how you need to preserve whole ecosystems. Like, it isn't enough to just take a large tract of land and set it aside, that there is complex interconnections between all sorts of creatures that allow one particular species to thrive. So, for example, this is a discussion of a butterfly that lives in Washington State along the Yakima River. And the Nature Conservancy buys this property that has a bog on it, and they think, oh, that's the kind of landscape that this particular butterfly needs to successfully live. So they buy the property, and then they realize that's not all that the butterfly needs. It says, no one then realized that particular butterfly species relied on a particular violet species, and that violet relied on grazing to keep the grasses short. Once cattle were removed, invasive grasses, shrubs, and tall trees took over. The violets failed to grow. The butterflies disappeared. So you not only needed this landscape, this bog landscape, but you needed this particular violet flower to grow, and that violet needed needed some form of grazing or vegetation removal so that trees and shrubs and whatnot wouldn't grow up and basically crowd them out of the landscape. And so that's really interesting. And I think also another thing that I am really cognizant of in my own work is that there are multiple things influencing the success or failure of any particular species, and remove any one of those characteristics from the ecosystem and the species cannot thrive any longer. And so that was really, there's a lot of examples like that in this book. And then there's a lot of discussion, particularly about the monarch butterfly and how the monarch butterfly essentially has two sets of instructions within themselves. One is reproduction and one is migration. And depending on the environmental cues that the monarch is given throughout its life cycle, depends on which set of instructions clicks on and they follow. So to me, that was almost like a nature versus nurture kind of an argument, where, you know, there's some, like for humans, there's this discussion about human development, about whether it's, you know, your genetics or whether it's how you're raised that influences the kind of person you are. And of course, it's a combination of both things, right? And it's the same with monarch butterflies. Like whether or not the monarch is migrating, because there are various monarchs that are, you know, different generations of monarchs are either migratory or they're there for reproduction. And basically you don't do both at the same time. You're either migrating or you're reproducing. And depending on the environmental cues that monarch is being given, not only when they're in the butterfly phase, but also when they're in the caterpillar phase of their life cycle, will tell that butterfly whether or not to go into migratory mode or whether to stay in reproductive mode. And I think that is fascinating. There was so much in this book that was new information to me. I learned a ton. I was engaged throughout. The writing is excellent. I would encourage anybody to pick up this book, regardless of whether you are a science person or not. I think this is written for a general audience, and anybody can benefit from reading this book. And it's just a gorgeous piece of writing about one particular group of critters in the world that brings joy to a lot of people. So yeah, this was an excellent, excellent read, and I'm so glad I picked it up for Springathon. And I'm going to end this third vlog here, even though it's not as long and maybe as some of the other ones, and hope that in the fourth week of my Springathon reading, I will have much more interesting things to show you in the vlog. Hope you're all doing well and finding some good books to read, and I will talk to you later.